So Jeremy Seitz, who are you?
Who am I? I am a human being.
Great.
Okay, so the long story short is I'm American. I did most of my career up through my 30s in mostly in New York and worked in the internet scene there. And then I traveled across the pond with my family and landed in Switzerland in 2006 and did contracting, freelancing, remote stuff, a lot of remote work actually, which is handy now that I was doing that so early. And then in 2016 or so, after a couple other gigs that I had done, I joined Media, ended up at Ricardo. I was CTO of Ricardo from 2017 until about a month ago. Mm-hmm. And then after the whole changes that happened in Media, which we now call TX, I've taken on the role of CTO of TX Markets, and I'm a tinkerer and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, are you doing your Briggs-Myers result?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Myers-Briggs. Okay.
I'm NLTR4 now.
Okay. ENTP. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So today, so I'm really glad that you're joining us as a CTO, because we're going to talk about the engineering management and engineering culture at TX Market. So we've heard it many times through the different interviews that we had, how crucial technology and engineering is to the TX group.
Yeah.
And so of course, the subject of management of engineers is always a topic.
Yes.
So maybe let's start with quite an open question.
Sure.
What is it like to be an engineer at TX?
Well, I think TX is a great place to be an engineer because something that I see that a lot of people take seriously is the fact that it's not just programming.
Yeah.
That engineers are solving problems. That's what they do by nature. They solve problems and they need to understand and be motivated why they're solving a problem or being asked to solve a problem. They also get really pissed off by doing things that don't matter.
Yes.
They don't like to waste their time doing stuff that is repetitive or useless, or to have limitations imposed on them when they know that they could solve a problem in a better way.
Yeah.
At the same time, this is what kills engineers, because this endless thirst for solving the problem in a better way, or learning a better technology or applying a better technique, can often come at odds with the reality of what it is that we need to do and the limitations of time and budget.
Yes.
And like any profession, I think engineering is closer to being art than it is to being business, because there's a balance, And
there's always a way to make it more perfect or better.
Yes, it's never done.
Could be an endless.
Code is never done. But to answer your question, what it's like to be an engineer at TX, I believe that we understand that. I think it's become part of our DNA for the last 5 years. And I think that the people who are managing engineers understand that, and they also have a fairly good sense of how to develop people and how to connect with them on a regular basis to keep them inspired and keep them encouraged.
Yes. So I guess one of the ways also for engineers to feel included, or at least they would like to work on better ways or not waste their time, and a lot of it has to do with how well is engineering integrated in the decisions that are made within the group.
Yes, this is of the utmost importance, and I think it's something that a lot of people get wrong. Is one of the worst ways to develop a product is to validate, plan, design it, and then hand it to the devs.
Yeah.
Because this fails over and over again. And if you do your homework and you go back and understand the Agile Manifesto and where that came from, and how the people who worked on the Agile Manifesto, who are some of the best software developers in the last 100 years, they advocate this idea that engineers need to be directly connected with the customer as much as possible. And that means that engineers need to have some social skills, they need to have empathy to understand the problems that people are having, and they need to feel the motivation. And there's nothing that motivates an engineer more than knowing that a real person is going to use their software. They don't write software in a vacuum. If an engineer is writing software because they want to see CPU levels go up and and see what kind of numbers they can generate, they're not getting the point.
Yeah.
The point of software is to make people's life better in some way. And whether it's a developer's life or a person shopping or doing matchmaking or whatever it is, trying to buy a house, your software is there for a reason to make those people's lives better. And if you're able to connect engineers with that mission and get them involved with product people, that you have a team that is working together on that problem, it's always better results. And the best products are always created this way.
So other I guess processes in the product development cycle to make sure that engineers are part of the discussion from the beginning.
It's a classic problem. I can't speak for all of the companies in TX markets because I'm so new at this role and I was so deep into Ricardo. But I can tell you how it works at Ricardo, which is the engineers and the product managers work very close together, and also customer care. And it didn't used to be that way, but we got it that way.
Okay.
Rohit, who's our CPO, and Francesco and I and the rest of the management team, together with the engineering managers and the product managers and so forth, we really leveled the playing field to bring together our demos every week, sharing customer feedback on all the channels. It's co-ownership of the whole thing from top to bottom.
Yeah. Even
using the product yourself. I mean, engineers buying and selling things on Ricardo, like, why are you developing a product that you're not using? You need to use it, you know? So there, I think that's like super important, that there is no barrier between engineers or marketing people or product people. And the same goes for product people understanding why we have limitations in our code. What are our what is our tech debt and how do we handle it and all of that. So yeah, it has to be totally open.
So you felt that at least in Ricardo that culture was established.
It's not perfect, but we got better at it.
We got better.
I'll put it that way. We got a lot better at it. Yeah.
Cool. I guess one of the stereotypes also, when you said a big stereotype is, okay, let's develop something. Let's think about something, hand it to the devs. Another one is the devs are, sitting at their desk, being introverts, just coding. And earlier you were talking about social skills. So is this cliche? First of all, do you find it true at TX Group, or is there more, diversity of personality? And also, how do you make sure that you foster a collaborative environment between engineers and other functions?
Yes, I think it's not only is it true, I think it is by nature how people are. In the absence of being, if you have engineers in a company who are not connected with the product and feel far away from the process, they will entertain themselves by building things. They will focus more on the code and the servers and the APIs and all of that, and that becomes their playground, and they're more focused on that and making that great than they are about how are the users using it and how is the product working.
Yeah.
To break that, and this is a direct result of not involving people. I think it's the breakthrough is when you actually get everybody on the same page. And if you have departments in a company, like marketing's trying to, you have company goals. Marketing's trying to solve it in one way. Engineering's trying to solve it in another. Product's trying to solve it in another. They need each other. And then they're like, but we all have different ideas of how to do this. That's what has to be broken. And if you get everybody following the same goal, then suddenly the engineers will care and get involved. And I like to tell engineers, don't fall in love with your code. It's the worst thing that you can do, because as soon as you fall in love with your code and you start defending it and you don't want to change it or you want to control it, you become out of touch with what's happening with the users and the product.
Yes.
So we should be strict about just wanting to throw code away like it's garbage. And code is a cost. It's not an asset, it's a cost. We want to get rid of it, replace it as fast as possible. So, yeah. So
also, especially in software engineering, it's an always changing environment. There's always new technologies coming up, and you have to keep up with what's going on. So how at TX, or at least in the experience that you've that you've had in the different TX companies, how how do you grow the skills of your engineers?
So there's a number of ways to do it. One is through pairing. I think when you force engineers to work together in teams, like that two people on one keyboard, basically, even if it's remote and virtual, they begin to write and share their best practices together. Another thing is like keeping their skills on top of stuff, having a constant stream of training and experts coming in to challenge them. We just taught at Ricardo, we taught 20 non-mobile developers how to do native development in iOS and Android. Wow. They did boot camp for a week. And this gets them in the mindset of like, learning something new. Another key point is we try to make room for something we call engineering time, which is meaning you've got to carve out part of your cycle of work that is not driven by the product roadmap. It's not driven by bugs and business goals. It is literally time for you to try stuff. Yeah. And the reason that you do that is if you don't make time for that, people will do it on their normal work. So you tell a developer, we need to build a form to do blah, 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 and they say, now is a really great time for me to try out a new React library. And then, it takes longer, you put untested code in production, but if you make this time separate, they actually know I can use this time to experiment and try something else, and then they can do so, and they get that out of their system, they get the knowledge, and then they're able to apply it to the real product. Okay.
So it's good to hear that you're investing with time or, conducting trainings in the development of your people. And what about also professional growth? Can engineers become, I guess they always can, but are there many examples of engineers becoming themselves managers and growing within the company?
Yes, at Ricardo at least, almost all the engineers who are managers were developers. They worked their way up. It's very rare that we would hire a manager. Okay. I think that's important because unless you know what it's like to be a developer, and you live that, and you can show that you can do it successfully and manage your time and your code and your relationship with your peers. Engineering management is about people, the people part. Yeah. You have to be able to listen and not talk. You have to be able to let people rant. You have to be critical and be able to look at their code. You have to encourage them and get them excited about stuff. And but not all engineers want to be managers. So it is a blocking path if you only give that as a way to advance your career. So we go in three directions. Okay. One is engineering management. Yeah. One is becoming a principal engineer, meaning you manage nobody, but you're an expert. You're like the best of the best, and you get more time. So our principal engineers are never fully assigned into teams as much. They get more time to help all the other engineers. And this is a strategy that, like Google professes, for example, your best developers spend all of their time helping others and not just writing code. Yeah. And then the third way you can move up your ladder is becoming what we call a tech lead, which is meaning that you're leading a team to find solutions. Okay. You're herding engineers. You're not managing them directly, but you're herding them and working with the PM and brainstorming ideas and looking and talking to the users, and you're on the front line.
The thought process of that team to solve the problem.
Exactly. You're on the front line with product, basically. Yeah. So you're like an engineer that is working directly with product to plan and figure out what it is we're going to do, how we're going to solve this problem. Okay. So that's three different paths that you can have.
Now that's nice to know, because it's true, not every, especially it's not just in engineering, not everybody wants to be a manager of people and want to have, go deeper in their specialty.
Exactly. Some people are much happier to be on their computer keyboard writing code, and that's cool. You can make an awesome salary and advance your career by doing that. Yeah.
How about the level of freedom do your engineers at TX feel free and independent, or how is there a balance? How does it work?
I can say for a fact that all of them don't. I would hope that some of them do, and I hope that I can make more of them feel freedom. And I think it's a broad term, but in general, they need to feel like what they're doing matters and it has impact. And they need to have flexibility. So, for example, moving people between teams is something that helps. If you keep things stable for too long, it can get boring for people, or they can develop silos or anti-patterns. Yeah. If they have the freedom to learn new things, and to try experiments in production, even with production traffic for some small percentage. That freedom is exciting. But I think most importantly, I tell people, like, if you don't get up to work every day being excited about what it is you're about to do, then something's wrong, right? So
yes.
they should...
There's only so long you can go with that.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. And so you've mentioned, employee mobility, moving between teams, different path of growth for engineers. And what are other ways that you try to keep your people happy, your engineers happy at TX?
I think a number of different things. One is challenging them to take on different responsibilities. By having your engineers, for instance, doing on-duty rotations. So being available in evenings or weekends sounds like something that would be horrible, but we pay for it, we train them, and it becomes a badge of honor that they know that they're looking after the site and they're able to basically take full control of the entire platform if necessary in an emergency. And that also makes them think differently about the code that they're writing. Is it reliable? Is it secure? Yeah. Or giving them the chance to work in guilds to exchange things, or to take leadership on the decision of standards, or to research things and try to investigate. Connecting them in between companies, like go talk to this person at HomeGate or Tutti, or share your experiences. These kinds of opportunities, I think, really challenge people to grow their knowledge, their skills, their interpersonal communication, everything.
So apart from this conference, was actually started as an idea exchange platform between software engineers. Are there other type of events or mechanisms within TX Group to make sure that what you just said, go talk to somebody at Tutti, like how does this happen? Yeah, so engineering projects are one thing. I think we could do more of them. Conferences, going to conferences is great now. A lot of them happen remotely, but people are still doing some of that. Yeah. Giving them the chance to get together and work on projects together, even breaking team boundaries or company boundaries, is another way to do it. Yeah. But I think we need more of it in TX. I think we're not doing enough, especially at the group level, and that's something that I really want to do, is to create more opportunities for people to have things like hack days, or to do experiments, or maybe we should write a game together. Wouldn't that be cool? If That'd be super cool.
We could get engineers together and just write a game. Why not? If it could even be fun for our users, or create a new revenue opportunity for the company.
There you go.
Who knows?
Exclusive on Conf TV channel. Maybe this project will be started.
We integrated YouTube videos into Ricardo recently because people put them in the listings. Yes. And one of our engineers, Flavian, came up with this idea and did some experimentation with video. And now if you paste a video link in your listing on Ricardo, it becomes playable in the page. But this kind of stuff, it can really make the product better if people get a chance to try things and play around.
Very cool. Yeah. I was going to ask you also about, what kind of methodology you use, but you mentioned earlier the Agile Manifesto.
Which is not an actual process, it's a mindset, right? Yeah. In general, most teams follow Scrum, some variation of Scrum. Yeah. There's also Kanban and so forth, but we leave a lot of freedoms to teams on how they do that. The important thing is that they do retros regularly, and we keep a rhythm. So at Ricardo, for example, it's every week stand-ups and demos without question. Okay. And this rhythm keeps the transparency in the company. It keeps a rhythm that it basically, these rituals are so important. And I recently gave a talk about this at the Agile conference, but it's not so important that you're using story points or how you're writing your cards or definition of done. What's actually more important is the conversations are happening. Yeah. There's clear roles in the team. Yeah. People are doing the retros. They're always finding ways to keep try drop stuff. So retro planning, or I'm not so like a retrospective. A retrospective. How did it go? What should we change? Okay. What is working? What is not working? Yeah. And then the hardest part of all of this is planning. Planning is the hardest part, trying to predict what it is you're going to do. And the answer there is shorter cycles. So in Ricardo, we do every 6 weeks. Some other companies, Tutti, for example, is doing now shorter cycles. We get away from quarterly. Quarterly is too long now. You know, 6 weeks is pretty good, but even that could be smaller. The faster you can react and the faster you can see if something's working or not, the better it is. And teams always resist it. They're like, a week is too short for a sprint. I want 2 weeks. But if you find a way to get a result, not a worse result faster, not crappy code because you can throw it out the door, but break the problem down into smaller pieces so you can validate that this is really the right way we're going.
Okay.
And then you can show it transparently to other people. Doing this in a really religiously strict way ensures that people get better. It always works.
Yeah. So we're actually getting a lot of insight. So 1 week sprints, short 6 week cycles, weekly rituals.
Yes.
This is how it's happening at TX.
Demos every week, retrospectives. Following this pattern, I think, it's industry-wide proven. It works. Pretty much everybody does some variation on it, but the really good companies do it fast, frequently, with low drama. You know?
Yeah, people know this is good, but to actually instill the culture that we have to stick to them, that's the harder part.
Exactly.
And I guess that's what makes TX a successful company.
Yes, we get that here. I see the marketplace companies really get it. We've got some fantastic agile people as well in the company. So there's some people that come from backgrounds where they have coached and worked with companies and really done change management and things like that. So Clive Adams from Carfi, for example, has an impressive history doing agile as a coach and things like that. We've got trained scrum masters and they're hiding in the scenes, and if we pull them out and get their experiences, we start to improve all the time.
So you've mentioned to me that one of the themes that was on your mind a lot is the issue of diversity amongst engineering teams.
Yes.
And apart from, and I guess it's not just because it is a trendy topic. What is a deeper reason that it is on your mind, and what action would you like to put in place, or and first of all, how is the diversity at TX, and how in which direction would you like it to go?
Yeah, so I mean, being completely frank, there's not enough women working in engineering. Like we're pretty terrible at it overall. We have diversity in the company, but I think it's not only a TX problem, it's also a Swiss problem.
Okay.
My daughter, who's 14, is wanting to be a developer and programming games, and even at her age, she encounters so much resistance from her peers in her school who are like, you should consider a career in nursing or being a teacher. It's part of the cultural thing, but I think also there's a negative feedback loop that happens when you have too many men being in engineering and programming, and that environment becomes not as open and attractive for women to go into. It becomes harder. And also I think there's a mindset lock on a lot of engineers when they interview women, that they cast them in a different expectation or a different, the communication style is different. And I personally had teams where I hired a female developer in a team and immediately saw the dynamic in the team change, and things get better because I think the diversity of different people's points of view and different people's inputs, and I don't know what it is specifically that we need to do, but I think we have to do something about it, and we have to make a concerted effort to try to attract more women to be engineers at this company. I see they do a much better job at it in Belgrade, for example. The culture is different, and the ratio of men to women in engineering is much better there.
Okay.
But I think here in Switzerland, we definitely have to change it.
Okay. Well, becoming conscious of it is the first step.
Yeah.
So good that you're thinking about it. So I guess you just mentioned Belgrade.
Yes.
And that, I have heard from many people in Zurich who works for digital companies that the recruitment of engineers is a topic in town. And I guess maybe that is what has triggered the opening another office in Belgrade. Why do you think there's not a matching supply of engineers in Zurich versus what is actually needed?
I think we have a lot of specialists in Switzerland, and they, if you're looking for a particular specialist, you might have a bit better luck, but finding front-end developers, full-stack developers, mobile developers, there's a lot of competition. We've got Google, we've got banks, we've got Digitech Galaxis, we've got Co-op and Migros, we've got SBB. There's a lot of companies hiring engineers all over. We have to be competitive in salary, in culture, in the type of software we're writing, the technologies we're choosing. Yeah. All of those things are critically important. And basically, it's easy. If you have great engineers, they will by virtue attract other good engineers.
Yes.
If you don't have good engineers, good luck. So retaining the best people that we have, the ones that people want to work with, that is maybe one of the best things. And also events like this, being public. We don't at TX we're not enough present in conferences and meetups and speaking engagements. Now it's hard, of course, but I think we should sponsor more events. We should get more involved with the community. We should make these things more possible. That's something else I want to work on together with HR and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, the whole day today we've been talking to different employees of the TX group, and hopefully we were able to get a glimpse of what the culture is within TX, so not just for engineering, but in general, and showed what kind of fantastic project you can work in if you join TX. So we have a couple of minutes left. So if somebody would like to, is interested in an engineering career at TX, is there, what would you advise these people to do?
I would advise them to reach out to some of the engineers that are working at TX, or to just do an on-site meet and greet day. A lot of people think an interview is you have to schedule an interview or something like that. I think just connecting with anyone on LinkedIn who is working at a company you might be interested in, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. Yeah. I like to say that the best engineers are not applying for jobs, they are stolen. Okay. So many of our great engineers we've stolen from other companies simply by talking to them, hanging out, sharing code, open source. The fact that we do open source and release it is another thing that I want to trumpet more often. Yes. But that's how we can attract people, by showing them the kinds of stuff that we do, that they're like, I want to work with people that are doing that. That's what will work. So
that's one of the reasons behind open source. It's also you can attract talent.
Yes, yes. And I was very pissed off when I read an interview. Digitech did a PR stunt where they said they were releasing their ERP system as open source. It was one library in C#. Meanwhile, Tuti's released like a dozen things. Ricardo's released a bunch of stuff. All of our companies have released great libraries and code bases and we've got some amazing open source developers. Jonas Wagner in Tutti, for example, has some of his libraries are being used by thousands of companies now for doing things like image manipulation and resizing and stuff like that. So we have quite some talent that's doing open source in this company, and we can use that better than we do.
Did you hear that, everybody?
More open source.
So now it's been rectified. The information has been out. So lots of sharing and open source. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Really appreciate all the interviews, interview time that you've given us. But I think this topic of how comfortable engineers feel within the TX group is quite important. So a lot of insightful. A lot of information about the day-to-day of engineers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting as well.